We all know that goal-oriented people are more successful, happier, and just overall more productive. But setting and keeping goals is a skill, and like any other skill, there's a right and a wrong way to go about doing it. One thing you might find helpful is actually separating your goals into behavior-based and outcome-based models. There's a few differences between the two, and knowing which is which can be the key to your success. So stick with us in this episode as Devon and I break down the difference between behavioral versus outcome-based goals. Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, a show where we discuss living as a leader worth following, leading others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for future generations. My name is Jimmy Gonzalez Jr., a learning and development professional and leadership coach, sitting down with my co-host Anthony Devon Watts Jr., an expert contact center leader that has effectively led and developed dynamic teams with high motivation. Together, we have over 30 years experience in the corporate game. Join us as we discuss our growth as leaders, share the lessons we've learned, and interview others to see how their leadership style was shaped as they were mentored by adversity. Yo. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast presented by the Legacy Leadership Learning Group. Remember, this is a show where we teach you how to live as a leader worth following, how to develop others to do the same, and then in doing so, leaving a legacy for generations to come. I am your host, Jimmy Gonzalez, along with my co-host, Devon Watts Jr.
Skull. Vikes in the building.
Got the Vikings hat. Yes, we're looking forward to a crazy wild card football weekend.
My team, man, they're sitting down for the rest of the of the year. But
I stopped wearing my any of my sports affiliation stuff when I know the season's over. Since we're there, so like I'm on a meeting at work, and some of the meetings we still do by Zoom, and I went into the meeting and didn't realize that I still had like the Notre Dame background.
Oh.
Yeah, so that like they're just asking me, oh, did you graduate from Notre Dame? And I'm like, no, I graduated from Florida A&M University. That's just my favorite team. I'm like, yeah, season's over. I need to drop this background. Like, I'm done. But to our listeners and our viewers, thank you for joining us. I digressed. We're going to be chopping up the difference between behavior and outcome-based goals. We know, it's that time of year. If you haven't done so already, you should at least be, thinking about planning your goals, goal chunking, going through that whole process. But we want to really break down the difference between behavior and outcome-based goals. So definitely look forward to having this conversation with my homeboy today and really, again, talking about that specifically. Thank you for joining us. Again, we appreciate all of the love and all of the support. Continue, right, as we go through this process to make sure that you like the actual podcast itself, that you leave us a review. Again, whether you're listening to us on Spotify or iTunes, please go ahead and do that. If you're watching, for our viewers on the YouTube channel, go ahead and make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so. Go ahead and hit that alert button so that you are alerted, not just when we're dropping new episodes, but we have new, fresh learning content that we're going to be delivering on a weekly basis. So we are putting it out there, and our new partner, Ricardo Bernias, also known as Rico, is really going to be helping to man that piece of it. So he's on the hook. He's on the hook for some learning content to be able to provide to all of you out there. And then don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms. You can follow myself, Coach Jimmy G Jr., or Devon at Leadership Docent on Instagram. You can follow the podcast itself at Legacy Leadership. And then, of course, on Facebook, on YouTube, and then on LinkedIn at Legacy Leadership, Legacy in Leadership Podcast. And if you haven't jumped into community yet, please, what are you waiting for? Find us on Facebook, Legacy Leader Community, very easy to find. Request to get a part of that group. We have a lot of stuff going on in there. Again, we're dropping exclusive content in there, kind of first look information and content in there as well. We just this past week also went in there and talked about really just teaching, man, and breaking some things down for, how do you get comfortable with asking for help? And we all need that. We need those. We drop 9 tips and 3 action items. So that's the type of content that you'll be getting in the community. So again, if you haven't joined us, check us out. on Facebook. You can reach out to us, Legacy Leadership Community. We'd love to have you in there and join in some of these conversations. Um, so look forward to seeing you there. Absolutely. Behavior versus outcome-based goals. Um, I mean, I always ask, so I definitely don't want to just, want to get into this topic because we know that you guys want to hear about this. I'm like, what are you talking about? Behavior versus outcome-based goals. But how you doing? I mean, you're rocking this goal. Vikings are out of the playoffs. How you doing in general?
Obviously, I'm feeling in good spirits if I'm confident to come and rock a team that finished below 500.
True.
Right, but I'm loyal, so I'm still rock for my Vikes, and hopefully Justin Jefferson pulls out the Rookie of the Year. That's what I'm
There you
looking
go.
forward to. But
Mm-hmm.
outside of that, man, I'm in great spirits. Like you said, I think the thing that has me in the best spirits, to be honest with you, is I know you already kind of called it out, but just kind of the discourse, the discussion that's going on in the legacy leader community
Mm-hmm.
that we have on Facebook, and just being able to engage with our legacy leaders, man. And you're right, it is that time of the year, so a lot of folks are really focused on goal setting and establishing goals and the things that they're going to accomplish. And actually, I heard it said, man, and it really resonated with me when I heard this, and I was like, yo, that's a whole mood. But I heard somebody say that they plan to not play with 2021 the way that 2020 did not play with them,
Mm.
right? And so I was like, oh, I like that. Yeah, that's definitely the move for 2021, right? So you can just feel the energy. I think, that stuff is infectious, right? It's contagious. Like you can see, interesting words to use during a pandemic, but you guys know what I mean, right? Like you can just kind of tap into that energy of other folks that are really going through this process of outlining the things that they're looking to tackle in 2021. And I would say the energy is just different. It's definitely different than it has been in prior years. I think largely because of the things we've experienced in 2020. But yeah, man, I think that has me in really good spirits, man. Just the dialogue that continues to go throughout the day, and people kind of sharing what they're getting after, and encouragement, and best practices, and just kind of all of these things, man. So that has me in a good space. What about you?
No, I'm right there with you, man. Past events, there's still heaviness. We just starting the year off, and there's a craziness already going on in our country. I'm just trying to keep it positive, though, man. And we have so many things that we're looking to accomplish, and not just for ourselves. Like we're trying to give to y'all, to the community, and continue to up our game and challenge ourselves to continue to provide good content and experiences for our people, whether that's the experience of you listening, you watching us, or you joining us in challenges and some of these webinars and classes that we're doing in the legacy leader community. We're just zoned in on creating the best possible experience and providing as much value as possible. And that has me hyped. And we're talking about goals. We're not going to necessarily be getting into how to break down goals. If you're interested in that, you can go back to season 1 and episode 18. The name of it is Moonshot Mindset, but that's really talking about achieving success through goal setting. And we break down 4 different steps and kind of principles to help you do that. But I mentioned it on the last episode. I had a really good conversation with my mom about 2021 and our goals and our vision. Then I had a conversation which was more of kind of a coaching session with my sister and breaking some things down to her about setting goals. But I love doing that stuff, man. And I love having those type of conversations and just thinking about the future, but how today and what we do today and the disciplines and the habits of today are going to allow us to get to, hopefully, God willing, to those aspirations and things that we are looking towards in the future. So yeah, man, good spirits, bro, high energy. Workout's still going well. I told you I'm starting to dial in the nutrition and work on that piece. So all of that, is all of that's important, right? Emotional, spiritual, mental, physical. If you haven't been with us before and you're new, that's something that we are definitely a huge proponent on, is sharpening your soul and making sure that you're focusing on those 4 areas.
Yep.
So yeah, so keeping it going, baby, keeping it going. So you posted something actually a couple of weeks ago about kind of about goal setting, but not necessarily goal setting, but kind of that what kind of sparked the interest about this topic, really the difference between behavior and outcome-based goals and how those behaviors really help you to get to that outcome-based goal that you're trying to achieve. So why don't you let our listeners and our viewers know a little bit about that post that you made inside of the Legacy Leader community?
Absolutely. So yeah, I guess the reason why it made me think about goal setting is because I think anytime you go through the goal setting process, you're acknowledging the fact that you're working towards something. So there has to be a certain amount of effort, a certain amount of grind, a certain amount of grit that's necessary in order to get to that desired outcome. You know that's not going to happen overnight, right? But you know that if I continue to work and I continue to execute, that I should get the desired outcome that I want. And so a while back, I posted something as a Monday motivation from Usain Bolt, which I thought was just a fire quote. For those who don't know who Usain Bolt, because that could very well be the case, but he's arguably considered the greatest sprinter to ever live in the history of the planet, the world's fastest man, the fastest man in history, multiple gold medals, just, again, a phenomenal athlete. And he was quoted as saying that, hey, I trained 4 years. I trained 4 years to run 9 seconds. He's talking about his world record, 100-meter dash. So I trained 4 years to work 9 seconds. And that just put a lot of things in perspective to me about, the beauty of the grind, right? A lot of people see the success, they see the outcome, but they don't see everything that preceded that outcome, right? That preceded the success that really makes or break if you're successful or not. And so to me, that just tied right back into goal setting when you're talking about setting goals and establishing goals. It's the difference between, setting a goal around your behaviors and then setting a goal around the outcome, right? Like, what do you want to achieve? What do you want the end result to be? And then I couldn't help but just naturally start to compare, the goal setting process to the coaching process, especially for us as leaders. Like when we go through the process of coaching and developing folks, you guys have probably heard this quite a bit. If you've learned any type of official coaching method, or where people are breaking down like, hey, you need to focus on the myophy, the most impactful opportunity or area for improvement, opportunity for improvement, is focusing on the behaviors. Like it does nothing to just, sit down with somebody and say, you need to get to X by Y, and that be the extent of coaching. You really need to be able to identify the behaviors that ultimately influence the result at the end of the day, right? And I think that comes naturally to us as leaders as we continue to refine our coaching and development process to automatically think about, well, what behaviors am I going to address in this discussion in order to tie it to this desired outcome? So the funny thing to me is that we don't seem to make that connection when it comes to goal setting for ourselves. Mm-hmm. Like it should be natural that if we're goal setting for ourselves, and to me, goal setting is just another form of coaching, but now it's self-coaching, right? Mm-hmm. Like I should be able to break down my goal into 2 distinct areas. My goals should be broken down into 2 distinct areas. One that is focused on the behavioral goals. So what do I want to change about my habits to put me in the position for the desired outcome? And then my outcome-based goal, like what do I want the desired outcome to be at the end of the day? And so seeing as this is the top of the year, everybody's talking about goal setting, new year, new you, new goals. We want to make sure that we do our diligence. We're good stewards of this legacy leader community, and we bring it to everybody's attention. The importance of making sure you establish behavioral-based goals and then outcome-based goals, and what are the difference between the two?
Yeah, for sure. So let's jump into that, right? So when we talk about behavior-based goals, behavior-based goals are typically changes to how you act. For instance, maybe I want to handle stress better. I want to be nicer to other people. I want to spend less time procrastinating. Or typically, those are examples of behavior-based goals, right? And they focus on really how you personally feel and then how you behave, instead of really just looking at purely the outcome of your actions. Now, these behavior-based goals can play into the outcome-based goals, but they're 2 different things. And again, that's what we're going to do for you when we break down the differences. But when you change how you think and how you feel, you often start to realize that there's a change in your results, right? Because we talk about kind of that stinking thinking, right? That
Mhm.
a lot of the lack of results that we have currently are really because of how we think about things, which then lead to feelings, negative thoughts, negative feelings, and then we kind of just shut ourselves down from taking the steps or doing the things or making ourselves scared or nervous or anxious, whatever that feeling is for you, to then go ahead and achieve and take the steps to achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve for yourself. But in order to make these behavior-based goals, like you really need to reflect, you do need to reflect on how you feel and really start to analyze those things, especially when you're completing a task.
Mhm.
Um, there are certain tasks, and we were kind of talking about this prior to hitting record. There are certain tasks that I don't necessarily enjoy doing, but they're
Mhm.
things that I need to get done, whether that's in my personal life or for my job that I do, kind of my 9 to 5. Um, so you got to think about that in your own life. When you're doing these tasks, like do you get snippy with your coworkers? Maybe in the morning time, do you feel like tired when you're trying to meet a deadline? Really, how are you feeling as you're going through the process of trying to complete this task and to hit this particular goal? So when you're focusing on, again, on the way that you feel when you're not performing well, and really thinking about how you're feeling in those moments, it gives you an opportunity to say, okay, well, I know that this is how I'm feeling, and I'm a big proponent. Get this, y'all, that your feelings don't come from just poof, from thin air. They come from a thought.
Mhm.
So what am I thinking? And typically, again, it's some type of negative thought that is then causing that feeling to come up. So, man, yeah, I'm doing this project, I'm working on this task, but I don't really like this, or I don't really want to do this, or I don't agree with this. And you're having these negative thoughts and putting focus on that, which then makes you feel a particular way. And either you don't complete the task, you don't do it with excellence, whatever kind of that negative outcome is. Um, so what we want to do is making sure that we're making a true concrete effort to change again how we feel in those particular moments, and that's really what we're talking about and focusing on when we talk about those behavior-based goals. Definitely, and I'm with you, Devon, like the behaviors that you take, because you can't just set a goal and then not do anything, right? You have to set the goals, the outcomes that I'm trying to achieve, and then put certain action steps and behaviors in place to reach those things. But what holds us back from typically hitting our goals, again, are those feelings, those negative thoughts that cause the feelings that get in the way of us moving forward. So that is what we want to focus on as far as these behavior based goals.
Well, yeah, absolutely right. Because what you're talking about is, when we're talking about behaviors, we're talking about behavior-based goals, but specifically behaviors. Just breaking that down, these are things that are observable, they're repeatable, right? Like, what are those triggers for you? Right? What are those
Mm.
triggers for you? Those things that put you again in that negative headspace, that negative disposition, that prevents you from exerting the maximum effort necessary in order to complete whatever the task is, whatever the objective is, that ultimately can tie to your outcome based result, right? Your outcome based result. And I think back to kind of some of the goals that we've been able to establish for ourselves coming into 2021, things that we're doing with the podcast, things that we're even doing personally, right? We'll let the community in on a little bit of the green room talk, right? But one, we were both just having kind of discussion, catching up on where we're at with our physical fitness goals and some
Mm-hmm.
of the things that we're targeting for 2021, and the opportunity for our behavior based goals was really around our disposition when it came to eating, meal prepping, and kind of the work that's associated with that, right? Like, are just that negative headspace of, oh man, like I have to actually like think about what I'm gonna eat. Like I gotta plan this thing out. Like I gotta be mindful of like my macros, like, and just even in both of our dispositions and just kind of the whole nine, we're just like, oh, but I don't want to do that, right? Like I just don't want to have to do, like I didn't have to think about eating. Now we know, you and I being kind of at this as long as we've been at this, we know the importance that nutrition plays in terms of a behavior to get to the desired outcome based goal of what our body composition wants to be, where we want to be from a weight perspective, where we want to be from a strength perspective. That's the outcome based goal, right? And a part of the behavior is, well, we need to be consistent with going to the gym. We need to be consistent in our workout. We need to be consistent in our nutrition, right? And then if you peel back the layer of the onion a little bit further, what prevents us from that behavior being consistent in our nutrition is the behavior of our feelings towards meal preps and the effort that it takes to do nutrition properly, right? And so um, fortunately for us, we have each other as accountability partners, and we can kind of take talk through those things and encourage one another and come up with strategies or tactics to address the behavioral mindset, the feeling, so that we can be better at executing on the actual behaviors to get to the desired outcome-based goal. So my challenge would be for our legacy leader community, as you go through this process of outlining your goals that are in front of you, and for 2021. And I know that you may have actually gone through a similar process, for 2020. And obviously, the pandemic and all the things that happened in 2020 not permitting, kind of remove that noise if you can, from your thought process, from your analysis, and really do some introspection and think about, like, how do I feel when it comes to some of these behavioral type tasks that ultimately tie into my outcome based goal, right? Because I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we can find, like, I'll use myself as the example. The feelings that I have right now about the effort it takes to commit to the nutrition component and the preparation and all that stuff, the fact that I have to think about that now, like, oh God, woe is me, I have to actually think about eating. Um, those feelings have existed for years. I've had that same negative disposition about it ever since I was, like, 15, 16. Mostly because I know what my trigger was. My trigger was that back when I was 15, 16, I had to consume a lot in
Mm-hmm.
order to get to my weight goals. So that I'm talking about eating like 7, 8 times a day, right? And so I just have these triggers, and then these feelings that get triggered by thinking about nutrition, that even now at 32 I still can't completely shake, because I'm like, oh man, this is a thing now, right? And so I would just challenge our listeners, as you're going through your goal setting process, you're examining your behavioral based goals and those feelings that manifest themselves when you're tackling it. Identify what those triggers are. Identify what those feelings are. Name those feelings and name those triggers so you can understand what the association is, and then be intentional. Be intentional about addressing that behavior, about flipping that behavior. Make it a goal to just have a different disposition when it comes to the task. And, like, if you do that and you start there, then you'll be surprised how the rest of it starts to fall into place. The ability to be consistent in the other areas from a behavioral perspective start to fall into place, and that gets you closer and closer to your outcome based goal, if those two things are tied together.
Yeah, doing that is going to help. It's just going to make things more pleasant. It's going to make you more productive. For our listeners, you won't be able to see it, but I've been having, like, this huge just smile on my face for the last 2 minutes, and just really laughing at myself, the both of us, but even myself. If you're watching this vidcast, you would see that cheese on my face, because we were just doing that. And me, like, we're sitting here talking about, I'm talking to my coach at the gym, and she's breaking down the numbers for me, and she told me that I have to start consuming like 250 grams a day, and I'm like, ugh. So again, if you've been following us for any amount of time, especially throughout the whole first season, you know that we are transparent. Obviously, we know that we're not perfect. While we have accomplished certain things in our life and we feel confident in respects, like, we still know that we don't always have it figured out, right? And it's always that that opportunity to keep tweaking things and remind yourself and remind each other, which is why I appreciate my man, because we hold each other accountable that way. That it really is the thought that I have. And I remember, when I really started that journey several years ago, of, at one point, for my folks out there, I was 260 pounds and just very out of shape. And I started to get to this point where I was about 200 and really getting back into the gym, and I completely changed how I ate. Um, but the point I'm making is that I had to eat a lot, as we were just saying, but I had to switch my mentality and start telling myself, no, like, like you need to love to eat because of what it's doing to your body and the results that you're going to be able to get. So I really had to start thinking about my thoughts and how I was thinking about food and how I was thinking about eating, especially that much. And allow those thoughts again to change how I felt, so that I could be successful eating a whole bunch of brown or white rice and chicken and broccoli and stuff like that. Um, so thank you for the reminder. Again, we're talking about these things, but I'm just sitting here laughing at myself because again, we still fall victim at times, but that's why we have these conversations. That's why we coach each other. That's why we coach other people. Because again, as we talked about the other day in the group, that this is kind of a form of asking for help, not necessarily verbally asking for it, but just realize, what, yeah, I do need to hear a little bit more of that, Devon, because I realize that I still fall victim every once in a while. So that's, ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about in regards to behavior-based goals. Then we have outcome-based goals, right? Which outcome-based goals are changes that you're going to make to your performance and the things that you're doing. So for instance, um, I want to kind of answer and go through my emails a little bit faster. Maybe I'm trying to reduce the amount of errors that I'm making in a day, or when I'm working on a particular project, and getting projects done on time are all, again, outcome-based goals that you set for yourself. They focus on the outcome of your actions and the things that you're putting into place, rather than what we just talked about, rather than how you feel about performing the particular task. Outcome-based goals, they tend to be easier to quantify, which is good because we want to be able to track and put numbers down. So like, going back to the example, like I'm tracking how many carbs and how many grams of protein and fat I'm eating on a daily basis, how many calories I'm consuming on a daily basis. Forget about how I feel about the workouts, but I'm keeping track of how many workouts I'm doing per week and then per month. So those are all things, of course, that are we can quantify as we're going through those. So you can count the number of emails, right, that you respond to before lunch. You can keep track of the amount of time that you're spending on a particular task or a particular project. For that reason, most people focus on making outcome-based goals because it's easier. Like I can quantify, I can look at it, especially if you're a numbers person and you're all into the spreadsheets. I can put it into the spreadsheet. I can measure it. I can see. I can make charts and graphs, and I can see all those things. And sometimes we tend to not want to focus on our feelings, right, and how we're feeling in any given moment, or how we're feeling about a particular task or project or something that we're trying to do. So I'll stop there and then kind of let you, talk a little bit about, how you feel about outcome-based goals themselves.
Yeah. So when I think about outcome-based goals, right? Gosh, I like just this comparison of this phrase just keeps ringing around in my head, because you're right. It is easy for people to naturally lean towards the outcome based goals. It's the
Mm-hmm.
things that are measurable, right? Easy to track. Like you can either say yes, I did it, or no, I didn't do it, right? But I find that often the people that are consistently the most successful, most consistently successful at manifesting, achieving, however you want to call it, every single goal that they set for themselves, are the ones that do a great job of not just clearly defining the outcome-based goal, but also defining the behavior-based goal that ties to it, right? And the thing that comes to mind is, those that are the most successful on their path, right, on their path to success or greatness or achieving this goal, are the ones that don't just focus on the destination, but they actually spend a lot of time focused on the journey. And the behavior-based goals, those behavior-based goals that we kind of broke down and talked about, are really about the journey, right? About the mindset, the headspace that you need to be in, and the things that are not measurable but are observable, they're actionable, they're repeatable, right? And then for the outcome-based goals, these are the things that are measurable, right? Clearly measurable, and then you can, say, yeah, I achieved it, or no, I didn't achieve it. Even within the outcome-based goals, where I think at times we fall short is, even though we can measure it, where we fall short at times is consistently measuring it along the way, right? Like, and we're not going to get into it on this episode by any stretch of the imagination, but in future episodes or in future learning content that you guys will get from the Legacy Leadership Learning Group. We're going to talk a little bit about goal chunking, and we're going to talk about how to break down your goals and the whole nine, right? But there's an approach, there's a methodology to doing this, because it's not just enough to say this is where I want to end up at. I want to end up at X by Y, but there are checkpoints along the way, things that you can measure along the way, a cadence for measurement that allows you to assess, am I heading in the right direction? If I'm not, or if I'm not on track, how do I adjust some of those behavioral components so that I can get to the desired outcome, right? And so, again, the outcome-based objectives, they tend to come natural for us because, again, we can put the number down on a paper or on a spreadsheet or on a chart or something like that. Mm-hmm. But even then, we have opportunities with, after we've committed to that number or that desired outcome, like what's our cadence of checking in, touching base, and ensuring that we're heading in the right direction, getting the feedback so that we can adjust the behaviors along the way.
Yeah, that just kind of had me thinking, and I'll just reiterate to our legacy leaders out there how important it is. It is great to have a vision and to set goals, and sometimes that I even posted recently kind of a mind mapping exercise I was doing for my goals for 2021. And that's kind of the fun part, because it's like, yeah, you're dreaming and you're visioning and you're thinking about all these great things that you want to achieve. Again, that tends to be a little bit easier. The more difficult part then is, all right, now that those are my goals, again, what are the action steps and the behaviors that I need to put in place, and start reverse engineering that. So if I have let's just say a 30-day goal, what do I need to do this week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, in order to make sure that I'm taking those steps to achieve that ultimate goal in the end, and then thinking about how am I feeling through this process, and making sure that my thoughts, I'm having positive thoughts and I'm in that good mind space to produce positive feelings, so that I'm even that much more energized to get the task done that I really love doing, but also to get those tedious tasks done and things that I really don't enjoy doing, but I know need to get done, and they're part of this overall process for me to achieve that goal. And when you said falling in love with the process, that's part of it too, is falling in love with the grimy stuff, with the things that you don't always like doing, or that you're not even necessarily always good at, but I know I need to keep getting after it and keep doing it so I can improve. All of those things, kind of fall into those spots that are not necessarily enjoyable, but we have to learn to love them, and love working through it and working through the process itself. So for our folks out there, when we talk about these behavior versus outcome-based goals, I think the key too is just making it all work together, right? What we just talked about, making it work together with the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, the behaviors, the actions that we're going to put in place, and then really taking a look at how we feel through that process, and making sure that we're trying to stay as positive as possible. So that's really the key, is kind of melding those two things together. Often, again, you can get to the root of the problem by changing your behavior, and then watch as your outcomes change. So as I start changing my thoughts, changes my feelings, changes the behaviors that I start taking, then you'll definitely start to see much, much more positive results from that. Sometimes it's hard to kind of separate the two of those things, but that's okay. Like, give yourself some grace through that process. Just don't lose sight of the fact that your performance really is a mix of both of those things.
Absolutely.
The outcome that I'm looking for, and then the behaviors themselves. And just having that right mindset, man, is just so important as you're working hard to press forward and succeed and achieve, that goal that you're trying to achieve. So make them work together, and you'll find yourself having a lot more success. And again, it just being a much more pleasurable process throughout.
Yeah, I like that actually.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I like that actually, because you talked about falling in love with the process. You talked about just making it a more pleasurable process, and I think, like for me, right, I'm using our fitness goal and our fitness commitment, because it's top of mind. We just kind of talked about it, and it's pretty commonplace, especially now coming into the top of the year. People usually have fitness goals, and I think even now more so than ever, I saw some some post people saying, hey, I'm gonna try to lose the quarantine 15 or something like that. So when I think about just kind of my own personal journey, our own personal journeys, um, I know for a fact, like while I have the feelings that I have about the meal preparation component that I need to work through from a behavioral perspective, what continues to keep me on this path and propel me towards achieving that outcome, the desired outcome of body composition and all that stuff is I'm in love with the process. I'm not even in love with the end result, the output. Like the body composition and how I look, like that's not what motivates me. It literally is you and I kind of talked about this just a little bit a couple weeks back, but it's the mental discipline, the game that occurs there, right? Like that process, the process of all right, when I'm getting ready to go out or go work out, like did I do everything to prepare myself to dominate my workout, right? To win my workout because it's me versus me. It's me versus my preparation. It's me versus the game plan that I've put together and me versus my ability to execute on the game plan that I outlined. And then, once I get into the gym and I'm running or I'm working out or whatever the case may be, it's being able to complete everything that I laid out to get completed and knowing that, there's going to be a moment where I'm going to be struggling with the rep. And, I said I was going to do 10, but I only got 8 clean right now. Like I got to get these last 2. Am I going to get these last 2 and mentally dig and push myself to get those last 2? Or am I going to end up, succumbing to the workout and the weight and being defeated? Right. And it's kind of that mental aspect that I've fallen in love with where I get hype off of not being defeated by the 2 reps. Like that's the motivation for me. And then that ultimately ties into getting me closer to my outcome-based goal, right? My outcome-based goal of how I want to look in the body composition, all the other stuff. But the pleasure for me is in that process, like falling in love with that process of hitting the gym, having the music up, working out, pushing myself to the point where it's like, man, I don't even know if I can get this. Then mentally challenging myself to say, you have no choice but to get this, and then manifesting that, right? And so I think the key that you've touched on, which I just want to continue to reiterate for our legacy leaders, as you're thinking about this, and again, it doesn't have to be in the fitness space, right? We're just using that as a vehicle to kind of connect with you guys and relate to what we currently have been talking about and focusing on. But it really is. You have to be firing on all 3 cylinders, right? Like we talked about the behavior base and the outcome base and making those things work in tandem. The glue that really continues to kind of make those things gel and work in tandem is the mental aspect of it, like the mental component of it. When we talked about the behavior, the mental component of that is ensuring that you are being critical and going back and assessing what mental triggers are in play that causes you to be in a certain mind a headspace, a certain mindset, right, before you have to tackle the mundane behavior, right? So like you have to be able to master yourself from a mental perspective there, and then from an outcome-based perspective, the mental component is, in not just defining your goal, right? Because you need to be thoughtful about how you do that and what you're committing to, right? But then mentally ensuring that you are measuring and taking stock of your progress along the way. What is my game plan? Is my game plan working as intended? Am I starting to head closer to my goal, 3 weeks in, or am I further away from my goal than where I started? And then if I am further away, then what do I need to change about my strategy, my approach, my behavioral component? Like that mental game is always in play. So especially, again, from a goal setting perspective as a leader and everything that we do, the mental component is the most important component of every single thing we do, from goal setting to time management to driving performance to change improvement, change management, all of that, right? And so you got to make sure that you're hitting on all 3 cylinders. And for me, a big part of that mental component again is being able to fall in love with the process.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just even today at I told you about the team meeting that we had at the end of the day at the job, and it was good that actually at some point the the topic of kind of getting counseling and see, just having conversations with people and talking through your feelings and your emotions and stuff like that, and just how beneficial that is. Um, but we can all see how we were affected, and I would say at times, and please don't mistake me, because we've gone through some very, very difficult situations, but how we can let certain things affect us when we really do have control over our feelings, or how we allow in the number of ways that we're having information thrown at us, and how we put too much thought into this or into that. And again, those thoughts cause us to feel a particular way. And while there was a lot of tragedy and things that happened, over the last year, like there's some of us that, while we saw those things and we felt those things, we talked about those things, and we mourned, when it was time to mourn, we were going through those situations, but like there was still a lot of positivity that came out of that, right? Because we're focusing on that mental aspect, not always perfect, not always doing that, but focusing on that mental aspect, and how can I do my best to control my mind, because it's mine.
Mm-hmm.
They're my thoughts, and those
Mm-hmm.
thoughts are creating my feelings. Nobody else makes me feel a particular way than myself. They may influence, but I'm still allowing that influence one way or another to come in. Um, I just encourage everybody, again, when we're talking about that discipline and that mental effort, is how do I feel those feelings, not try to push them to the side, so that I can learn to, one, realize where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do let that thought create this feeling and let that feeling slip in, how do I feel that? Because that's still my truth at that time. And learn to think about it, to feel it, and then to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? To let it go, and then realize if that's a feeling that I don't want anymore, that I don't like, don't necessarily run from it. How do I, again, change those thoughts and think about that moment, and that that time that created that thought, that then created that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I just
Well,
encourage everybody to think about that as we, again, look to keep things moving in a positive direction in this new year.
no, no, well said, man. I think what it comes down to, and I know you and I have kind of talked about this before, and I'll share with our legacy leader community is, our thoughts are, to me, they're just like, it's just like gasoline, right? Our thoughts are like gasoline, and just like gasoline in real life, right? If you pour it over something and just drench it and set it ablaze, it can consume,
Hmm.
right? Or if you take that same gasoline, you put it in a tank and you ignite it, it can propel,
Yes.
right? And so we have a decision to make every time that we are inundated with these things, and we have these thoughts that kind of rattle around in our brains. What are we going to do with it? Are we going to allow it to propel, or are we going to allow it to consume?
Mm.
Right? Everybody's making that choice every single day. There are definitely there's been no shortage of images, situations, all of these things over this past year, and even leading up into this week, that we've all been consuming, we've all had to consume, and again, we're all faced with that same question:
Hmm.
Am I going to use this to propel me? Am I going to use this to consume me? Right, and I definitely think there's a difference. Propelling, when you think about propelling, using as as fuel, using that gasoline as fuel, it's about progress. It's about moving forward. It's about achieving, right?
Yes.
And that can be in a multitude of places. It doesn't have to be just strictly tied to I want to propel, like I'm using all these things as fuel to propel me towards my fitness goal, or my weight loss goal, or my business goal. It doesn't have to be that. It can be in that specific area. If you're seeing these things that are triggering these feelings and these thoughts, when it comes to civic duty, civil unrest, and playing a part in my community, right? Like you can use that to propel you to take action, to do something about it, so that you are influencing your neighborhood and leading in your community, in your area, and being a steward of those that are around you, right? Or you can allow it to consume you. And to me, consuming is really more. It's not about progress, by any stretch of the imagination, right? It's really the opposite of progress. It's deterioration, right? When something is consuming you, right? It goes from kind of thought to obsession to almost debilitating,
Yeah.
right? To
Paralyzing. Hmm.
paralyzing, right? And so the challenge for all of us, as we've been consuming this media, inundated with these images, or as you think about your behavior-based goals and the triggers that you have, is once you've identified kind of that gasoline, right? Are you going to use it to propel? Are you going to use it to consume? Is it going to be fuel, or is it going to be paralyzing? Those are the questions that you have to answer. I'm confident, with our legacy leader community and the support system that we've been able to build, the community we've been able to build, the accountability system we've been able to build. If you guys are struggling with making that transition from, again, kind of consuming to propelling, you have people around you that are going to help provide the encouragement to get you to where you need to be from a mental perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. And honestly, man, for our legacy leaders out there, again, that is our heart. Um, if you want to know if you're just joining the Legacy and Leadership podcast, you can definitely go back to season 1, episode 1, 2, and 3 to learn a little bit more about us individually and kind of what we do. But this is what we're here for, right? Is again to help teach you the things, the mental aspect, the strategies, the tactics that you need to know and to apply and to live out in your life so that you can truly become a leader worth following. And as you continue to master that piece and grow as a leader and grow in the trust that people have in you and the influence that provides, then you can start teaching others, and developing them and how they lead and how you lead groups of people in the masses. And again, that's really how you then leave a legacy, for generations and really having an opportunity to positively affect not just your life, but the people that are around you. And I think that's all really what we want, right? Like, we want positivity, man. We want to be able to touch people's lives. And if somebody's going to touch us, man, touch us in a most positive way and influence us in the most positive way. And hopefully we can, again, reciprocate that as well. So hopefully you're getting that. Hopefully you again, kind of got where we were coming from about behavior-based goals. Again, we typically think about how you act, which that is true. But again, really focusing on how you feel in certain moments based on the thoughts that you're having. I don't really want to consume 250 grams of carbs a day. But I know I need to. So I just got to, again, switch up those thoughts. It'll change my feelings, and I'll be able to hit the goals that I'm trying to hit from a fitness perspective. And then outcome-based goals, right? Outcome-based goals, again, are changes that you're making to your performance. And we just broke that down. They work tandem and work hand in hand. If I'm focusing on how I'm thinking, which is focusing on how I'm really feeling in those moments, and switching that up so I have a more positive thought process and feeling, believe me, it's going to get easier. You're going to start achieving goals, which is going to make you even happier. Your confidence is going to increase, and you'll see how that performance continues to rise as you start to hit those outcome-based goals on a much more consistent basis. So I know we had some other conversations kind of that, maybe parallel more of kind of vernacular that we use in the business world. Did you still want to jump into that as well?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can share for the legacy leaders, for our community in here. But yeah, so if you're looking for a way to easily kind of digest it or translate these things that we're breaking down into maybe again some nomenclature, some vernacular that you're already comfortable with, I say think of behavioral based goals as kind of your lead measures, right? And then the outcome based is kind of your lag measures, right? And for those that may not be familiar with that concept, I'd be more than glad to break it down. But when we're talking about assessing the performance of your business, assessing your pacing performance, your trends towards performance, you really have lead measures and you have lag measures. Your lead measures are things that are indicative that you are heading in the right direction, right? They are milestones or measurements where you can quickly say, okay, if these are positive, then I am going to have the desired outcome, right? Where your lag measures are measuring or assessing, did you achieve the desired outcome? Now, your lead measures give you an opportunity to influence and pivot and change, right? So that you can get towards your outcome based, outcome or your outcome based goal. Excuse me. Where your lag measures, like once you measure it, there's nothing you can do about it, right? So kind of going back to the example I shared, in the community, the legacy leader community, with Usain Bolt, right? So clearly his lag measure was what was the end number on that clock, that stopwatch, when he ran the 100-meter dash, right? When he had a goal of breaking the world record, right? Of maintaining his gold medal. Um, he doesn't know that until he's crossed the finish line. And then once he knows it, it's measured, it's in front of him, he can't go back and change it. Like, it's already happened, right? It's a lag measure, it's a lagging indicator. But his lead measure along that 4-year preparation process can be things around, okay, or even leading up to the day of the race, right? Did I get 8 hours worth of sleep? You can measure that immediately, right? It's an indicator that I'm well rested and prepared for the upcoming race, right? I'm in the best position possible to be successful in the upcoming race. Did I eat the appropriate amount of food, right? The right macros. And trust me, when you're at that level of an athlete, everything you consumed is optimized and just kind of down to, again, the macro, the micro, right? To ensure that you're putting the right fuel in your body so that you can perform at your peak performance, right? So, again, whether it's the sleep, whether it's what he's eating, the stretching routine, the warm-up routine, if all of those things are, positive, green lights, favorable, those are leading indicators that he's in the best position possible to perform at optimal him. And then the lag measure is what the end result is. So again, going back to the behavioral-based goals versus outcome-based goals, your behavioral-based goals really are your lead measures, right? If you're not in the right mindset, if you're not in the right headspace, if you don't have positive thought, right? If you're having negative thoughts and that's keeping you from doing kind of the mundane actions that are repeatable, observable, those behaviors, right? That's a leading indicator that you're far off from your outcome-based goal. If my outcome-based goal is to lose weight, well, the behavior associated with that is to eat right and to work out. And if I'm not in the right headspace to eat right and to work out, and I'm not doing that, that's a leading indicator I'm going to miss my outcome-based goal, right? And so, again, I think it's just another simple way for our leaders to be able to associate it or break it down, whether you want to do behavior-based or outcome-based. Again, think of it as a lead measure versus a lag measure. Leading indicator that I'm displaying the right behaviors, I'm heading towards my outcome. And the lag measure is, did I get the desired outcome?
No, absolutely. So as we said, before earlier, one of the key things is melding those two together. When you're talking about lead measures or lag measures, or again, the whole premise of this particular podcast episode is that behavior versus outcome-based goals. Melding those two together and making sure that they're working in tandem together. And then the other thing is really focusing on that mental perspective of it, right? Because again, especially from the behavior perspective, we're talking about the feelings and how those feelings can positively or negatively impact our behaviors, which are going to impact our opportunity to actually achieve those goals that we have for ourselves. And then just, our encouragement is to fall in love with the process. Don't get so caught up on the goal itself, because most time in life it's about the journey, right? So we have big goals that we have for ourselves and the Legacy Leadership Learning Group. But this is really what we enjoy the most, man. It is having these conversations, the work that we put in, the conversations that we have, the fun that we have in the planning, in the executing, and God willing, we'll achieve our goals. If not, we know that we had fun and we learned a lot of things in the process, and hopefully that we helped a lot of you guys out there in the process as well.
Absolutely.
Again, it is all about giving, right? So we're going to ask you to give something a little bit back as well. The first thing that we're going to do is to ask you, if you're listening to the podcast, whether you're on iTunes or Spotify, like it, make sure that you're downloading the episodes, and leave us a review. We would really, really love for you to leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify for sure. If you're watching the vidcast and you're with us on YouTube, make sure that you like the episode and that you subscribe to the channel. Yes, if you haven't subscribed, and then hit that alert button. hit the alert button so that you're always alerted when the new episodes are dropping. And I told you the fresh new learning content that's going to be dropping. We have bonus episodes coming out as well. So if you have the alert button on, you'll be alerted and you won't be surprised when you see some of the new goodness that's coming at you again, which is the Legacy and Leadership podcast. So we appreciate you guys very much. Again, to all of our legacy leaders, man. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for watching. Again, show us some love and share. Sharing is caring. So share this, the podcast, share this video with your friends and family and other folks that you know would really enjoy, or maybe they even need it. But in any case, like, they're just going to get a lot of value and benefit out of being part of this legacy leader community. We definitely appreciate that. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Coach Jimmy G Jr., at Leadership Docent. Follow the Legacy and Leadership podcast at Leadership Podcast. Legacy Leadership, my bad. And then follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and on LinkedIn at Legacy in Leadership Podcast. And if you haven't done so already, keep talking about it. Get into Facebook, get into our Legacy Leader community, where we're having more conversations about the podcast, about, again, other classes that we're giving. We're going live every Wednesday. Every Wednesday we're going live, and we're just continuing to add value and just teach, because we love to teach. Cold brew and convos, 8 o'clock every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to be able to check that out, again, join us in the Legacy Leadership Group community on Facebook. We definitely appreciate that. So, and then pay attention for the next episode that we have coming out, which is going to be episode number 26. We're still going to be talking a little bit about goals. Today, again, what's the difference between outcome and behavior-based goals. But we're going to be getting into goal setting and perseverance, right? Perseverance, which is really going to start taking us into the next series of podcast episodes that we're going to be doing. How do we remain resilient and persevere? We're going to set goals. You're going to put this action plan in place, but inevitably something's going to happen, whether it's the world and things are happening in your family, or there's just challenges along the way. How do you persevere and not just endure, not just fight through it and keep, just be strong and willpower through it, but really feel those moments and really learn how to truly be resilient through those times, and not just keep working through survival mode and I'm going to survive, I'm going to get through this. Again, we don't want to live in that space. We want to be able to truly be resilient and not just endure. So be on the lookout for that. Again, that's going to be coming in the next couple of weeks. But the next episode, setting goals and perseverance, coming at you. Again, Legacy and Leadership Podcast. I am your co-host, Jimmy Gonzalez Jr., along with my co-host and my good friend, Devon Watts Jr. Thank you for riding with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And as always, God bless and stay encouraged, y'all. Take care.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, hosted by Jimmy Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you live, lead, and leave a legacy worth remembering. Until next time.